Me personally, I really enjoyed Sasori as a villain, of course. His fight with his grandmother Chiyo and the Naruto fanbase favorite character Sakura would be one of my favorite fights, especially with how in-depth it is compared to Deidara versus Gaara, and also Naruto and Kakashi versus Deidara as well. Yeah, that's right, this fight was the best fight in the first arc of Shippuden, and probably the reason people are disappointed in not seeing more Sakura hype throughout Shippuden. So subscribe to the channel, as I don't care about likes, and join the Noti gang as we do a deep dive on Sasori of the Red Sand versus Sakura and Chiyo. Now, I must admit, when I first watched the anime of Naruto and Naruto Shippuden, I hated Sakura. For some reason, she really pissed me off, and I had to say, reading this fight in the manga, it really gave me a lot of respect to Sakura that I usually don't have. So it shows that how much I respect Sasori of the Red Sand and how much I didn't respect Sakura enough. Now, a little context when it comes to Sakura's power before this fight. Sakura was always good at genjutsu, but her rapidly manipulating chakra and instantly focusing into her fist attack was insane. In the beginning of Shippuden, Kakashi thinks she might even surpass the 5th Hokage Tsunade, so Sakura had a lot of hype. And a little bit more context before we actually get into the fight, Kankuro actually fought Sasori first, right after Gaara lost to Deidara, and he got low diff by Sasori with poison, and Sasori says, "I built your puppets." At this moment, Kankuro would learn this is Sasori of the Red Sand. Yes, the Akatsuki and who deserted the Sand Village 20 years ago. Kankuro also cuts off a little of the face mask that Sasori is wearing. This was, of course, was to track Sasori, as Sasori told Kankuro you had 2 to 3 days to live, showing how deadly Sasori is when it comes to how little he has to do to actually have you fatally ill. Now, the reason why I mention this, even though it's not really about the fight, is because Sakura removed Kankuro's poison. Yes, Sakura did the unthinkable and removed most of Kankuro's poison, showing how they already were having some sort of battle before they even met each other, which I found interesting by Kishimoto. Now, of course, if you have to talk about Sakura versus Sasori, it's more like Sasori versus Chiyo. Yes, it was a puppet fight. In my opinion, Sakura was one of the puppets that Chiyo was using. Now, Sasori created Hiroko for close combat, and you have to understand, a puppet master's biggest weakness is close combat. So Sasori was pretty much renovating or innovating the puppet ninjutsu, and that's why he's so great as a Naruto character. Now, in the beginning of this fight, Deidara actually explains how Sasori is stronger than him himself, even though he shouldn't say that. Now, this is the same Deidara that did amazing in the Naruto Kakashi battle, did amazing in the Gaara battle, did amazing in the Sasuke battle. Yes, this Deidara is underrated in power, so for him to say that Sasori is stronger than him shows you how monstrous Sasori is. I thought it was a pretty cool concept in the beginning of the fight when Sasori is shocked that Sakura was able to dodge his attacks until he realizes Chiyo's puppeting her as Sakura smashes his puppet Hiroko. Chiyo also took control of Hiroko's tail to protect Sakura when she threw an invisible kunai thread of chakra. As we learned, Chiyo's taught Sasori how to puppeteer, and showing that this fight is not going to be as easy as Sasori thought. We also learned that Sasori hasn't aged as well, showing that he also was turning himself slowly into a puppet himself and keeping his age the same over the last 20 years, which is just scary. In the beginning of the fight, we also learn of the aura that Sasori has, or the lore that Sasori has. We learned the third Kazekage was also kidnapped, and they couldn't believe he was killed as he was the strongest of all Kazekage, so they actually went to go look for him, which caused the Sand Village to get weakened. This wasn't even stated during the fight. This was actually in the Sand Village when they were discussing this. And then we skip to the fight and Sasori brings out the third Kazekage. I have to admit, Kishimoto was in his bag when he did that transition. It was more than 10 years ago that the third Kazekage vanished, and Chiyo says Sasori killed 3 Kazekages. Of course, we know Orochimaru killed the 4th Kazekage, Gaara's father in part 1 Naruto, and Deidara killed the 5th Kazekage, Gaara, and Sasori denies, of course, killing the 4th and 5th because he didn't do it by hand, but he was involved. He says it was his agent that was involved with Orochimaru, because of course Orochimaru and the Katsuki go way back. But if you think about it, Sasori had a hand in 3 Kazekage being killed, whether it was directly or indirectly. Now, of course, I have to admit, Chiyo in this fight was underrated. Her using Hiroko's tail to protect Sakura from Sasori's fast attack using the 3rd Kazekage puppet was insane. I also love how Chiyo was controlling Sakura. It was pretty amazing, but of course Sasori uses his poison gas. That's the thing, Sakura is not a puppet, and Sasori knows this. Sakura is not your typical ninja though. She is very intelligent, and she uses a letter bomb to move the poison gas away, which kind of was reckless, but it's Sakura's play style. That's her fight style if you think about it. And Chiyo brings a emotional element into the fight by pulling out Sasori's first puppet. Yes, the mother and the father, which is pretty much the puppet of his parents. But this is where Sasori takes it to a whole nother level, using the third Kazekage's jutsu, Satetsu, the Iron Sand, which made him the most powerful. It's magnetic sand adopted from the previous Shokaku host, showing how devastating that Iron Sand is. And Sasori was the only one who could actually use human puppets, and Chiyo tells Sakura to move out the way, she's now useless, showing how devastating the third Kazekage's jutsu really is. We would then see Sasori use the Iron Sand shower and Chiyo use a chakra shield she upgraded since Sasori last used his puppets, and Sasori mocks Chiyo from not dodging the sand jutsu as it cripples one of her most important puppets, the father puppet. We also see Chiyo use her own puppet arm to avoid the attack, showing that Chiyo also modified her body to have some puppetry as well, showing you have to modify yourself as a puppet to be a legendary puppet jutsu master. We also see Sakura get used by one-armed Chiyo, showing how great of a power she had. Even Sasori respected Chiyo's ability, and Kishimoto gave some hype to Sakura as well. In a short time, she was starting to read Sasori's offense fighting patterns, and at one point she didn't even need Chiyo to puppet her, which I felt was a great thing to make Sakura look not useless, as Chiyo stated earlier. We also see a little flashback of Sakura's training where Tsunade is teaching her pretty much evasion is the most important thing as a medic ninja. And then we see Sakura saying the puppeteer ninja weakness is moving their fingers before their attack, and is watching hand and arm gestures to see the direction of Sasori's attacks. I like how Sakura's explaining what she's actually observing, showing how her battle IQ is underrated. Now at this point, Sasori is getting fed up and he calls Sakura a hawk and is forced to use his own chakra so the fight won't drag on forever, showing that Sasori is actually taking this more serious than Kankuro the Jonin. We then see Sasori's huge Iron Sand attack, which injures Sakura, which could prove fatal, stated by Chiyo earlier in the fight. Yes, Sakura's poisoned and Chiyo's stuck as Sasori goes for the kill, but she breaks the third Kazekage puppet in the ultimate fake out. And to me, which is a big deal, people don't talk about this, Sakura breaking the third Kazekage, the most powerful Kazekage, is insane. Now Sakura uses this antidote so the poison becomes harmless proteins, and for the next 3 minutes she's pretty much immune to Sasori's poison, which won't affect her, which I found just insane. And I think Sasori gave the biggest respect I've ever seen him give by pretty much saying that he hasn't been forced to solve a problem like this since he joined the Akatsuki, and he actually goes his final form, yes, himself, as a human puppet, which I found super cool. Now the fight actually progresses 2 minutes in to the 3-minute time limit, and Sakura and Chiyo are hiding behind rocks against Sasori's insane fire jutsus as they have 1 minute left before Sasori can actually poison them again. And this is where we see Sasori with his final form actually do something cool by stabbing Sakura with his spear. And as Sasori goes to kill Chiyo, Sakura then protects Chiyo by grabbing the rope attached to the spear to pull Sasori in towards her and punches the shit out of Sasori. Talk about the dissembly of a puppet. Now, just as Sasori was going serious, Chiyo also had to go serious. She talks about how she forbid herself from using her secret Yubi no Kazu multiple digits. She's known for taking down a whole fortress with her multiple puppets, as the name of this jutsu is her secret white move Chikamatsu's 10 puppets, which I think is just super badass. Sasori explains that the first puppet master, Monzaemon's 10 masterpieces, is what Chiyo's using, but brings out a bunch of puppets himself he destroyed a whole country with. He calls this jutsu a secret red technique, performance of 100 puppets. So you see, if we do quick math, 100 is more than 10. But I must admit, Chiyo's puppets seem to be stronger but less in numbers, as she uses her Sampo Kyoko 3 treasure vacuum, and she's just taking out multiple puppets of Sasori with only her 10 puppets. Chiyo then tells Sakura to use a ceiling object which she throws towards Sasori, as he should not be able to move or use his chakra because he's trapped now. But we find out that Sasori uses a decoy puppet, kind of like a puppet clone jutsu, but it's not a clone, it's an actual decoy puppet. And this is where Sasori gets the advantage and attacks Chiyo from behind, but Sakura gets in the way and gets stabbed as she tells Chiyo to take the antidote. She sacrifices herself for Chiyo. I thought that was amazing. Now of course, Sakura's not a scrub as she heals herself while the sword is still inside her, which is impressive. Even Sasori had to admit that. We then see Chiyo of course not take the antidote, which is to be expected because of her age, as she doesn't want to waste it on herself. She'd rather Sakura use it. And then we see Sakura not letting letting go of the sword that Sasori stabbed her with as Chiyo uses his mother and father to stab Sasori's chest, the chakra piece inside the middle of his puppet. We then see Chiyo closing the wound that Sakura has as she pulled the sword out, and Sasori's just in complete awe because he stabbed a place a medic ninja can't heal, but Chiyo uses a transference technique she developed for Sasori to breathe life into even a puppet for the user's life, but Chiyo survived because Sakura was not yet dead, just mortally wounded. Now, how does Sasori respond to this? He says even if his grandmother died, he wouldn't feel a thing. As he explains, she would just be one of the thousands he's killed, and tells Sakura she's saying things a shinobi shouldn't say, a custom learned through Sand Village's teachings. Sasori tells Sakura to go to the Tenchi Bridge in the Hidden Grass Village 10 days from now at noon, where one of Orochimaru's men is his actual spy. It's pretty cool to see Sasori not be bitter and actually help out before he actually dies. But what I think is super interesting in this fight is the fact that Sasori anticipated Chiyo's final attack but couldn't dodge it. Was it because of the emotional element of mother and father coming out of nowhere? Or was it something else that just wasn't explained? Put it down in the comment section if you know the answer to why Sasori lost the fight on purpose. So if you guys want my final thoughts on this amazing fight, I think Sasori was stronger than both Chiyo and Sakura combined, but I must admit they pushed him physically and emotionally to levels he just couldn't perform under. As he maxed out his cold-hearted ninja way that ended up killing him. Yes, that same cold-hearted way actually was the demise of Sasori. Yeah, that's right, the same reason why he was able to defeat the strongest Kazekage also got him killed to an old woman and a Chunin medic ninja. Now, before we start throwing out labels, Chiyo is super underrated when it comes to her power. I don't care how old she is, especially in her prime. She probably was a monster in her prime for what we know from her. And Sakura was also underrated as she trained under the 5th Hokage herself. Of course, she would have monstrative strength and battle IQ. And I think Sakura does really well when she's in an assist mode rather than a 1v1 mode, which makes sense. She is a medic ninja. But yeah, if you guys want my honest thoughts, I still think Sasori was badass even though he lost this fight. That shows you how epic Sasori is and how we gotta give Kushimoto some respect for making Sasori this cool.